Hello, and welcome to this audio tape series called Focusing on Feeling Good. This is Dr. Michael Yapko. I hope and expect you will find this tape program helpful to you in better understanding the nature of depression and how to better manage some of the symptoms and issues often associated with it. On this first side, I want to tell you a little about depression, what it is, who gets depressed and why, what can be done about it, and even how to prevent future depressive episodes. I also want to talk about hypnosis as a treatment tool in order to provide you with some useful perspectives that will allow you to make good use of the 7 different hypnosis sessions on the remaining sides of each tape of this series. First, some perspective. I want to emphasize here at the outset that none of these materials can substitute for diagnosis and treatment by qualified mental health professionals. These tapes are meant to be sources of learning, support, and comfort to you, but they are not intended to be the sole help that you receive if you are, in fact, depressed. I also want to emphasize to you that when you're listening to and experiencing any of the hypnosis sessions on the remaining 7 sides, be sure to give it your full attention. Please do not listen to them when you are driving in a car or are otherwise needing to be attentive to your surroundings or responsibilities. They can help the most when you sit quietly and focus on them and absorb their helpful messages on many different levels. Okay, having given you some guidelines, let's talk about depression now. In the last 30 years, depression has gone from being one of the least to one of the best understood of the many emotional disorders that mental health professionals are asked to treat. We now know that depression is highly responsive to good treatment, and that good treatment is available from a variety of sources. This tape series is but one such source. So, just what is depression? The mental health profession officially categorizes depression as a mood disorder, but it is also well recognized that depression can take many different forms and can therefore differ quite markedly in symptoms and appearance from individual to individual. Despite the current popularity of calling depression a disease or an illness, this is not an accurate portrayal in most cases. I believe it is best to think of depression as a complex disorder rather than a disease that can affect many different aspects of your life. It can affect you physically, generating such common physiological symptoms as disturbances of sleep and appetite, a lowered sex drive, fatigue, and anxiety. Cognitively, depression can affect your ability to think clearly, making it difficult for you to focus your attention or to remember details, or cause you to make errors in judgment or to be indecisive. Depression can affect people's behavior, leading some to attempt suicide or to experience crying spells for no apparent reason, or even to engage in drug or alcohol abuse. In fact, many substance abusers are quite depressed and are simply using drugs or alcohol to cope with the anxiety or the stress of their depression. Drugs and alcohol can and do make matters worse, and so should be avoided as much as possible. Depression can affect your emotions, leading to feelings of sadness or despair, a deep sense of guilt, and feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. Interpersonally, depression can affect your ability to relate to others, leading to social withdrawal and isolation, or acting out in relationships in ways that are hurtful to others, or by just making destructive relationship choices. As you can see, depression is a complex, multidimensional problem. Depression generally takes one of 2 main forms. The first is called major depressive disorder, also known as unipolar depression, because it generates depression only. The second is called manic depressive illness, also known as bipolar disorder, for its generating mania, the emotional highs marked by euphoria, as well as the lows of depression. Major depression, or unipolar depression, is by far the more common form of depression and is the subject of this tape program. Let's talk about who gets depressed. Depression is currently the most common psychological disorder in the United States and in other Western countries as well. And, unfortunately, the rates of depression keep rising. Depression affects both men and women, people of all ages, people of all racial and ethnic groups, and people at all socioeconomic levels. Depression is, in many ways, unfortunately, an equal opportunity disorder. It is true, though, that some groups show higher rates of depression than do others. The highest rate of depression is found in those who are ages 25 to 44. But adolescents represent the fastest growing age group. Women are diagnosed as depressed 2 to 3 times as frequently as men. While there are clearly some physical vulnerabilities unique to women, such as postpartum depression, the higher rates of depression in women are primarily because of the vulnerabilities associated with women's socialization. So, when we ask the question, who can get depressed, the realistic answer is anyone. That includes people who are strong and skilled, or people who are famous, like well-known depression sufferers Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill. It also includes people who are average folks, who are not so famous. As you can now tell, depression is not a fixed thing, nor is it an easily defined experience. Let's address the question of what causes depression. Depression has many causes, not just one, and as a result, depression has many viable avenues of treatment. By recognizing that depression has many causes, it can help you better understand that it is not a disorder of personal weakness, nor is it a disorder arising from character flaws or from just feeling sorry for yourself. It is apparent to researchers and clinicians that biological, psychological, and sociological factors can all combine to cause depression in a given individual. Therefore, a biopsychosocial model is the most widely accepted view of the disorder within the mental health profession. Let's look more closely at each of these 3 major causative factors. On the biological level, there is some evidence to suggest that depression can be transmitted genetically from parent to offspring. This so-called genetic transmission factor appears to account for only a minority of cases of major depression, however. The genetic transmission factor appears to be the major culprit in bipolar disorder, however, which is best treated as a physical illness and with appropriate medication, though psychotherapy can also be helpful. Also in the biological realm, there is clear evidence that specific neurotransmitters, the brain's chemical messengers, are related to mood and can be influenced by antidepressant medications. These medications address what is commonly described as a chemical imbalance in the brain, in which certain neurotransmitters are believed to be in too low a concentration. However, I must point out that the notion of a chemical imbalance is a hypothesis. There is no firm evidence to date that that is in fact the case, since there is no test, such as a brain scan or blood test, to prove it. There is no doubt, however, that antidepressant medications can and do work well for the majority of sufferers as one part of a comprehensive treatment plan. Depression can also be caused by other physical factors, such as certain medications and physical conditions. Likewise, other physical and mental disorders can coexist with and even disguise the presence of depression. These are called comorbid conditions or coexisting conditions. It is a fact that the majority of depression sufferers also suffer comorbid conditions. Therefore, it is best for you to have a thorough physical examination and to speak openly with your doctor about your concerns in order to determine whether there may be a specific physical condition underlying or even masking your depression. It may also be wise for you to have a psychological evaluation in order to assess the possibility of a comorbid condition. I certainly wouldn't want you to underestimate the complexity of the problem and thereby attempt solutions that are destined to fail before you even begin, simply because you misread the situation. On the psychological level, depression can be caused by a variety of identifiable factors as well. Most often, depression is a product of how you interpret life events rather than the events themselves. By now, you've probably heard of the projective psychological test called the Rorschach inkblot test. That is a test in which someone is shown an amorphous, ambiguous inkblot and asked to describe what he or she sees. People describe seeing all kinds of things in the inkblot. Obviously, the things they see in the inkblot aren't really in the inkblot. It's just what the person projects. The principle that underlies projective tests is called the projective hypothesis, which says that when someone is faced with an ambiguous stimulus, he or she will project meaning onto it based on his or her own experience or frame of reference. Well, what is the most ambiguous stimulus that any of us ever face? In my judgment, the most ambiguous stimulus that any of us can ever face is life. Life is an experiential Rorschach. Life doesn't have any predetermined meaning. We give it meaning by the way we choose to live and the way we choose to react to the things that happen to us. So whatever you decide to do for a career, whomever you decide to marry or date, however you decide to spend your vacation time, those are your projections about what matters or who is attractive. Well, some people face the ambiguous stimulus of life and say, life is a glorious adventure. Other people face the ambiguous stimulus of life and say, life is a pain in the backside. These are two very different sets of projections that lead to two very different sets of feelings. What can I say about the psychological aspects of depression? I can say that depression is the result of an ongoing series of intricate projections that end up hurting the person who makes the mistake of believing his or her projections are really true. Thus, almost any stressful or hurtful experience has the potential to be depressing when it is misinterpreted or responded to ineffectively. The most common triggers are poor or hurtful relationships with others, a loss of significant attachments of one sort or another through death or divorce perhaps, or any serious blows to your sense of security or self-esteem. Inadequate personal resources to cope with stressful events, poor problem-solving capabilities, erroneous or self-limiting beliefs, and many other such psychological factors can contribute to depression as well. The third and final area to address is the cultural or sociological level. Depression is strongly affected by both social and cultural factors. The rates of depression in the United States and other Western nations have risen dramatically in recent decades in apparent response to rapidly changing social conditions, such as the de-emphasis of the traditional nuclear family, the increased social isolation associated with geographic mobility and less community involvement, and the increased reliance on technology, such as television, that defines us more as passive observers of life instead of being active participants. It is interesting to note that both the rate and the manner in which depression is expressed in other cultures besides our own varies widely with social conditions. It leads us to the inevitable conclusion that a significant amount of the experience of depression is a product of learning. So, I'm drawing your attention to the fact that while biology can play a significant role in the onset of depression, it plays a lesser role than your own individual psychology and your way of looking at the Rorschach of life and the influence of our culture and the things that we are exposed to on a day-in and day-out basis on your perceptions. Let me address the common question, is depression ever normal? Depression can be a completely normal response to painful circumstances, such as dealing with the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, an ongoing painful stressor such as a debilitating illness, or any serious threat to your sense of personal security or self-esteem. In such cases, depression can be a normal short-term experience, which is an appropriate response to whatever happened. However, if depression persists for at least 2 weeks and adversely affects your ability to function, it may be evidence of something more serious. Talking with a mental health professional can allow you an opportunity to make an objective assessment together as to whether your depression is normal or whether some form of treatment is indicated. What cures depression? The word cure is not generally an appropriate word choice for describing what happens in treatment. A better word choice is manage. Depression can go away, your mood can lift, and you can soon feel like your happier self again. But depression is a part of everyone's life experience, as I hope you now know. Bad things can and do happen to everyone, and so will depression to one degree or another. Learning to recognize what events commonly trigger your depressive episodes and applying new coping strategies and prevention strategies, such as the ones that you will learn in this tape series, are typical goals of treatment. The primary goals of therapy, including the self-help approaches of these tapes, are to 1. Generate a remission of your symptoms as quickly and effectively as possible. 2. Limit its destructive influence when an episode does occur. And 3. Prevent depression when possible. The tapes in the Focusing on Feeling Good program can help you do all of these things. What constitutes the effective treatment of depression? There are 2 major categories of treatment. The first is psychotherapy, and the second is antidepressant medication. Which is best? Well, individual responses vary, naturally, and either approach, alone or in combination, holds promise for providing relief. This tape series, of course, falls into the realm of self-help psychotherapy. This is not a medical approach involving the use of medication. Let's focus on the issue of psychotherapy. Psychotherapy has proven itself to be at least as effective as medication in almost all ways. In most ways, therapy actually performs better than medication. Why? Because of what I described earlier as the Rorschach of life. There is no medication that can teach you to be a better problem solver. There is no medication that can teach you how to think more critically. And there is no medication that can teach you to be a better relationship partner. These are life skills, and they can only be learned through active self-help approaches or through active structured learning opportunities in therapeutic or educational contexts. And so, psychotherapy is vital. Therein lies the value of the tapes in this series. These tapes emphasize learning. They emphasize developing coping skills, thinking skills, and relationship skills that can dramatically reduce and even eliminate depressive episodes. Every therapy that is known to be effective in the treatment of depression emphasizes certain life skills and features certain characteristics. These include 1. An emphasis on therapy as an active process of deliberately trying new behaviors and experimenting with your subjective perceptions. 2. A duration of treatment that is time-limited and not ongoing indefinitely. 3. A focus on solving current problems and resolving current symptoms rather than rehashing old issues from childhood. 4. A recognition that the primary goal of treatment is to resolve specific symptoms rather than trying to fix more poorly defined, abstract personality issues. 5. An emphasis on building specific skills such as rational thinking. And 6. An emphasis on developing and achieving specific future goals rather than analyzing past failures. The focusing on feeling good tapes are entirely consistent with each of the 6 goals just mentioned. Having described depression for you as largely a product of your responses to the Rorschach of life, you may now begin to see the reason why hypnosis is such a valuable tool. Hypnosis has been described by some experts as believed-in imagination. In other words, hypnosis allows you to get absorbed in a way of thinking, a way of believing that creates certain possibilities but simultaneously precludes others. What you have now learned about depression is that it, too, is a sort of believed-in imagination. The person who thinks that life is a pain and actually believes it is likely to experience depression. But that isn't a true belief, it's merely a projection. Over the years, I've discovered the value of working with hypnosis as a tool to help people get absorbed in new ways of thinking, new ways of believing that quickly help them feel better. If the word hypnosis conjures up in your mind images of a magician-like figure dangling a gold watch in the face of some stuporous subject while giving the command to sleep deeply, then you are very much misinformed about hypnosis. That old, tired Hollywood rendition has virtually nothing to do with the science and art of clinical hypnosis that has been developed by literally thousands of professionals, both academic and clinical, who have been researching the applications of hypnosis in various health professions such as medicine, dentistry, and psychology for decades. Modern clinical hypnosis is a valuable therapeutic tool used by serious healthcare professionals to treat a wide variety of complex medical and psychological problems. Hypnosis takes place when a clinician helps focus a client's attention on some suggested thought, feeling, or sensation. Anything that absorbs your attention and guides it in a positive or meaningful direction can serve as what is called a hypnotic induction. Hypnotic induction is any technique used to build the focus of a hypnotic state. When you're in the hypnotic state, you're very focused and very attentive, and you are also very relaxed and responsive to new helpful ideas and new positive possibilities. In the hypnotic state, you can learn new ideas more effectively and make better practical use of the things that you learn. Each of the other 7 sides of the Focusing on Feeling Good tape series presents you with a hypnotic induction to help focus and relax you, and then a series of helpful ideas, each on a different topic to help you cope with different symptoms and different issues related to your depression. The main advantage of using hypnosis in psychotherapy lies in its ability to amplify and give direction to the many extraordinary resources of the unconscious mind. When I talk about the unconscious mind, I'm talking about the part of you that generates responses that seem to be, under normal conditions, outside of your conscious control or beyond your ability to control deliberately. It's interesting, for example, that if I were to suggest to you that you make your left arm numb in the next 10 seconds, that you probably couldn't respond with the suggested experience of a numb left arm. In other words, you probably don't have a conscious or deliberate strategy to create numbness in your left arm at will. And yet, I can do a hypnotic induction with you, and in a focused state of hypnosis, I can suggest the very same thing to you, and lo and behold, you can discover that your arm is numb. How does that happen? You have an unconscious ability, an ability outside of your awareness, to be able to alter your experience of your body in response to meaningful suggestions. So what the science and art of hypnosis is about is studying and making use of these inner strengths and resources that are typically outside the realm of the person's awareness, learning to focus and direct them in particular ways in order to achieve desirable outcomes. These tapes, then, are about suggesting to you new ways of thinking about yourself and your life. If I were to just say the same things to you consciously, you'd likely say, "Gee, that's a nice idea," or "That's really helpful," but I don't know that you'd be able to integrate it and make the new perspective a part of who you are and how you do things. Your unconscious mind has the ability to make use of your memories, your expectations, your understandings, and your beliefs. These can all be combined in new ways to expand your range of choices. Because your perceptions are inevitably subjective, because your projections about life are inevitably subjective, they can change. Hypnosis simply permits greater access to your unconscious mind's resources so that those resources can be well used to help you make important desired changes. Having said all the things I've now said about depression and about hypnosis, I invite you to listen to the other 7 sides in whatever sequence you choose, depending what particular problem you want to address on a given day. I encourage you to listen to these tapes very carefully in a way that is focused and unhurried. You can sit back and close your eyes and really engage yourself with these tapes so that you can better absorb the deeper messages offered to you that hold such great potential to improve your life. This Focusing on Feeling Good program can help you overcome depression and also prevent future episodes, so you too can soon find it within yourself to rediscover what there is to enjoy in life. Life holds so many fantastic opportunities and wonderful potentials, but these are so hard to see when you're in the throes of depression. I believe that these tapes can make a powerful contribution to your life by helping you discover within yourself new possibilities and new skills that you can forever use to make your life wonderful. I wish you the best. Every day that I'm in clinical practice, I may be working with clients who are mildly depressed and sometimes with clients who are very severely depressed. They find themselves in situations that are enormously painful and need help finding their way out. I'm frequently struck by how often people in such circumstances will say to me, "Gee, it seemed like such a good idea at the time," to explain their obviously bad marriages, or to explain their obviously bad financial or business decisions, or to justify taking some course of action that could have been recognized well ahead of time as being potentially disastrous. If you were to ask me what the single most important skill is that people can have that I think would make the world a better place, I'd say that skill is foresight. Foresight is the ability to think ahead, to anticipate consequences of proposed courses of action realistically, and to be able to skillfully recognize that if I do this, then here is what is very likely to happen. It's unfortunate, however, that the great majority of people on this planet have a terribly limited ability to think about and anticipate the future realistically and in detail. People who are prone to depression, if they think much about the future at all, tend to project into the future the same kinds of hurts and pains they suffered in the past. Depressed clients literally say things to me like, "I'll never be happy," which is a prediction for the future. And when I ask, "Why not?" they say, "Because I never have been." They may say, "I'll never get a good job." And if I ask why not, they say, "Because I never had one." I'll never have a good relationship. Why not? Because I've never had one. Sometimes my clients make my work a little bit tougher by saying really convoluted things like, I'll never be happy until my parents treat me better when I was a kid. These are all examples of predicting the future on the basis of the past, as if tomorrow can only be more of yesterday. How can you move forward with your life by only looking backwards? Many people hold the notion that is so popularly thrown around that you have to analyze and understand the past in order to create a better future. What the research gathered over the last 20 years in treating depression has shown, however, is that that just isn't true. Exploring and analyzing the past isn't vitally necessary in order to create a positive future. What I am interested in, and what I hope you will be interested in, is how you can make decisions and take actions today, anticipating the kinds of beneficial consequences they will generate tomorrow. You can make decisions today that will bring you the kinds of things that you want to have happen tomorrow. Believe it or not, even when you are caught in the grips of depression, you have the ability to make choices. You can either choose to be a victim of some unseen force that you're calling depression and do nothing to change things, or you can choose to take charge of your life and start making some intelligent decisions today that will lead you to think differently, act differently, and eventually feel differently. The past is over, but the future hasn't happened yet. And so I want to encourage you through the things that I've just said and the things that I am about to say when I invite you to go into hypnosis, to focus on the future of all that is possible. The future isn't just more of the same. The future has the potential to be wonderfully different when you make choices that create new opportunities, or choices that bring new people into your life, or choices that allow you to learn new skills. Focus on the future now and how things can improve, because the future hasn't happened yet. Now, this being the very first hypnosis session of the tape series, I obviously don't know whether you've had any previous experience with hypnosis yet. So, if you've had some experience with hypnosis, then you already know it's a tool for focusing and relaxing, a way of setting aside all the demands and the pressures of everyday life in order for you to spend a little bit of time with yourself in a way that's easy and comfortable. And if you've never had an experience with hypnosis before, then I can safely say, I know you're going to enjoy this. The experience of hypnosis feels good, and more importantly, it opens the door to new perspectives and possibilities. In terms of the actual experience of hypnosis, I'm just going to go on talking about different ideas and different possibilities, and there really isn't anything that you have to do. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. What I'm hoping you'll do is allow yourself the luxury of finding yourself a comfortable place to sit, making sure that you're not distracted by anything or anybody. So, if it would help to let people know not to disturb you for a little while, then it would be good to do so. You can even take the phone off the hook if you wish, so that you can sit down and be comfortable and close your eyes and focus on these ideas and possibilities. Hypnosis isn't something you make happen, it's something you allow to happen. You'll know everything I say, you'll hear everything that goes on, and if something requires your attention, in the middle of hypnosis, of course, you can sit up and open your eyes and go take care of it. You're in control of what you experience. That's really the whole idea of doing hypnosis in the first place. It's a way of increasing the amount of control that you have over your thoughts and over your feelings and over your behaviors. In order to give this experience your full attention, make sure you're not doing anything else. Obviously, don't listen to this while you're driving a car. Don't listen to this while you're trying to have a conversation with someone, or while you are trying to read something, or while doing anything else that's distracting. Give the session your full attention in order to experience, at a deep level, the important ideas and practical learnings that you can take from this tape when you listen to it again and again. Then you can carry over new choices into your everyday life so that tomorrow really can be better. Find yourself a comfortable place to sit, and then sit in a position that is very comfortable for you. Arms and legs resting on the chair, or on the floor, or on the bed, or wherever you happen to be. But the important thing is to make sure that your body has good support, because you'll discover that as your body gets really relaxed, it also tends to get really heavy. So you probably don't want to have your arms or your legs crossed. Once you have settled into a comfortable position that you can sit in for a while, then I'd like you to allow your eyes to close so that you can start to build an internal focus, a focus within yourself, so that you can find within yourself those parts of yourself that most need to experience comfort, relaxation, the experience of being soothed with the words that I say, the new and helpful ideas and realizations that I bring to you. Because in that way, you can fully expect to absorb new possibilities and use them skillfully in your own behalf. Out of all the things that there are to focus on at this moment, you can turn your attention to the feelings of sitting comfortably, noticing how each breath that you take in allows you to grow more comfortable, more relaxed within yourself. And you now have these many minutes of absolute freedom, the freedom to not have to think, to not have to analyze, to not have to spin your thoughts around in so many different directions. It means that little by little, your thoughts can begin to get more focused. Your mind can get more comfortable, just as your body can get more comfortable. And little by little, the experience develops more completely and more fully. The experience of being deeply relaxed, wonderfully comfortable. Now there are many different things that I can talk about, but the very first thing that I want to talk about is the mind, your mind. After all, that's what we're dealing with. Your thoughts, your feelings, your way of looking at things. And my guess is that you already know how enormously complex the mind is. There isn't anyone who understands all of it. The fact that your mind is so complicated is precisely why you can have mixed feelings about things, why you can have conflicting motivations about things, how you can consciously feel hopeful and at the same time concerned, But you know there are different levels of awareness. And some of the most powerful experiences that you are capable of having take place at levels much deeper than just conscious awareness, much deeper. Whether you call that deeper part of yourself the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind or your deep self, doesn't really matter. It's just very important for you to know that there is a deeper part of you that learns and absorbs new understandings. And it's that deeper part of yourself that you can come to know and understand by listening to this tape and each of the tapes of this tape series. Because the whole reason that I created this tape series is because I know and you know that you want things to be better in your life. I know you want to feel better. And feeling better can happen when you begin to do things differently. So you're learning about your mind. You're learning about the relationship between the things that you think now and feel now and do now, and what happens later, the eventual results of the choices that you make. What would you like to experience differently? Go ahead and take a few moments to have a wonderful image of how life would be, could be, will be, when it's more satisfying. Create a vision that's detailed and vivid about what your life could look like and how it could feel good and satisfying to you. Now, I don't know if you could create that kind of wonderful vision right now, this moment, or whether that kind of powerful personal vision can evolve for you over the next few days or weeks. But you know and I know that there's nothing more powerful than a person with a vision. What is vision? It's a possibility that is so motivating and compelling that you start doing positive things now that can make your vision possible eventually. There are, I'm sure, important things in your life that you have accomplished. That if you have a high school diploma or a college degree, you didn't get it by sending in $2 in a cereal box top. You got it by consistently going to class, consistently taking and passing tests, consistently writing papers and turning them in, And were there times that you didn't want to go to class? Of course. There were times that you didn't want to go to class, but you went anyway. And what you discovered is that your feelings of a lack of interest in going comes and goes, but the diploma stays. The college degree stays. It's a very valuable realization that the goal of eventually graduating high school or college kept you going, even when you really didn't feel like it. That is the power of vision, the ability to see beyond the moment's discomfort. And we can take that principle and we can apply it in such a way that whatever it is that has been hurting you in the past is past, because you can now develop a new vision of learning new skills, changing the things that you say and changing the things that you do slowly, gradually, doing more things for tomorrow's successes than today's comfort. You know, it's a very common metaphor to talk about the unconscious mind as a sort of fertile soil, and that through hypnosis you can plant seeds that will grow. And even though that isn't even my most favorite metaphor, it's still a useful one. Now, fewer and fewer people live on farms these days. Most people live in cities. And there's something lost by living in a city, because in the city the emphasis is on right now. It's very different when you grow up on a farm, when every day your lifestyle requires you to think in much more long-term ways. A farmer spends time tilling the soil, preparing it for planting, preparing the soil, adding nutrients, planting seeds that the farmer knows aren't going to yield anything for weeks or months. And he has patience. And he knows that making the vision of a good crop yield become a reality will take time. But you learn to do things actively now to create the possibility of a good crop yield, if you're going to be a happy, successful farmer. I'd like you to learn to think in terms of planting seeds, preparing yourself for the changes about to come in your life. There are so many powerful and great things that can happen in your life. And when you realize that at a very deep level, as I hope that you're starting to, then you can nurture your feelings of optimism, that things can change, things can improve. You can learn things that you didn't know before. You can practice at developing new skills that you didn't have before. And so I can safely predict that there are important experiences that you're going to have in your life that will be wonderfully valuable. and they will really teach you something. They're experiences that haven't happened yet. And there will be places that you will go that you haven't been yet. Places that will be powerful. Places that will be happy. Places where you'll feel good. And I can safely predict that you will meet people that will influence you in important and wonderful ways that you haven't met yet. People that will care about you. People that will become friends. People that will become teachers. People that you haven't even met yet that will contribute to the higher quality of your life. Now, whoever it was that said, there are no guarantees in life, there are only opportunities, had the right idea. Opportunity speaks to the future, and the future hasn't happened yet. And every day, many times a day, it's as if you come to a fork in the road. And when you come to that fork in the road, if you go in the same direction, you can visit and revisit the same old places in your tired past. Or you can take the other direction and move enthusiastically into the future in a way that is powerful and motivating. And when you feel that wonderful feeling of hopefulness and optimism, that's the feeling that can join with your deeper understanding that you can make choices now. Make choices now that will bring you more of the things that you want for yourself in the future. And then that rich, vivid, detailed image, your vision of your future, can be what pulls you forward in your life. Having that image is wonderful. And learning to be detailed about generating the step-by-step sequences, the actions that you can take every single day, that too requires vision. And so as more and more of you begins to turn your attention to future possibilities, you can expect to find yourself starting to do things differently. And I think you'll be happily surprised to discover that you are starting to do things differently, more in line with your evolving vision. And it is the power of the future to draw you in ways that feel great, that can guide your daily choices, choosing carefully what to say and do for the results you want tomorrow, the next tomorrow, and all of your tomorrows. And so you can nurture these seeds of optimism that you're planting today. Let them grow. Let them grow. And now you can take whatever time you want to or need to absorb these important ideas and possibilities, and to integrate at a deep level the strength of these forward-looking messages about possibility and future and growth and change. And when you've had enough time to enjoy this experience of deep comfort, then that's when you can bring this experience to a comfortable close. And so when you're ready to bring yourself out of hypnosis, you can start to reorient yourself at a rate that is gradual and comfortable, slowly alerting yourself. And when you're ready, you can reorient yourself completely, fully alert yourself, and allow your eyes to open, bringing back with you the best feelings of feeling relaxed and comfortable and wonderfully optimistic as you remind yourself in the nicest of ways that the future hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be great. I don't know whether you have had the experience yet of reading my book, Breaking the Patterns of Depression, but in that book I describe in detail how people evolve stable patterns for the ways that they organize and respond to their life experiences. We all develop patterns in the ways that we interpret and respond to life events, patterns of thinking, patterns of feeling, and patterns of behavior. When someone's patterns of living work well, I don't hear about them as a problem. What people present to me as a clinical psychologist are the situations that their existing patterns don't lead them to handle very well. I end up hearing about those times when a person attempts to handle a situation or manage some part of himself or herself, and the person doesn't get the result that he or she wants, which then causes the person pain, despair, and even depression. So it is a basic point of my book, and it is the culmination of everything that I've learned over the last 20-odd years, that people learn to do things a certain way, whether it's form a relationship or make a business decision, and then they do what they know how to do. For as long as it works, I don't really hear much from the person. But when it doesn't work, what happens then? People who aren't depressed will observe that what they've been doing isn't working very well, and then they'll strive to do something else. If they're not sure what to do, they may ask for guidance from someone who is more experienced or knowledgeable. In contrast, it's often the case that people who are prone to depression do what they know how to do, and if it doesn't work, they personalize it. It's as if they say to themselves, "I can't do this, I'm no good." And it doesn't seem to occur to them that it isn't them that is ineffective or incompetent, rather it's the strategy they use. When I use the term strategy, I mean the series of steps that you follow in order to achieve a particular result. You have a strategy, whether you realize it consciously or not, for everything you do, including how you choose what clothes you are going to wear today, how you decide what you are going to eat for lunch when choosing from a menu, how you decide which car you are going to buy, and even how you decide who you are going to date or marry. For people who are effective, their strategies are efficient for doing what they are trying to do. The implication, of course, is that when you try something and it does not work, that doesn't mean that you are a failure or you're a loser. It means that what you tried didn't work. The old maxim, "If at first you don't succeed, try again," is a popular one and a well-intentioned one, but I would change it by adding, "And when you try again, do something different. Well, doing something different requires flexibility. It requires adaptability, meaning the ability to deliberately change your response to a familiar situation. For many people, it's so uncomfortable doing something new or doing something different, they just do what's comfortable even though it can't work. Others simply don't know what else to do, and so they give up and continually fail. It's very important that you learn the skill of setting aside your quite normal feelings of uncertainty or doubt or fear of trying something new in order to do something different that stands a better chance of obtaining the success that you're striving for. This next hypnosis session is about helping you to do that. The purpose of this session is to encourage you to be more flexible, to be more adaptable, to be willing to experiment. I'm choosing my words very carefully here. To be willing to experiment with new behaviors, new responses, and new perceptions. When will things change? When you do. When you do something different, you will inevitably get different results. New and different things will happen. Be willing to step outside your comfort zone, to do things differently in situations you know you can handle better. Learn from others who seem to do better, and use your ability to be observant to notice more of what works. That is such an important point. So I would encourage you now to get focused on the idea of doing something different. Find yourself a place to sit quietly and comfortably so you can listen attentively to this tape. Arrange yourself in a position that is comfortable for you and let your eyes close. Then you can begin by taking in a few deep, relaxing breaths and just orient yourself now to the idea, just to the idea of having some quiet time, some focused relaxation time, where you can be with yourself in a way that is accepting, nurturing, and let your body experience the comfort of having the freedom to just be. Because as you're learning from listening to this tape and the others, here you have the opportunity to experience yourself differently. And when I say experience yourself differently, I mean you can set aside your usual way of thinking, your usual way of feeling. Set aside your usual way of looking at things long enough to discover some very important things about yourself. The first thing that I would want you to start to become aware of is that the way that you think about things is different than the way things really are. That's true for you. It's true for me. It's true for anyone. After all, no one has cornered the market on truth about themselves or about their lives. Each of us grows up in a particular home, a particular family, a particular community, a particular culture. And we learn from all of them our views about everything, relationships, religion, education, politics, art, science, the world. And little by little, what you start to discover, if you live long enough and you think about it hard enough, is that there are so many ways of going through life. There are people who live happy, successful lives being married. And there are people who live wonderful lives being single. There are people who find happiness in their accomplishments. And there are people who find contentment in just being who they are without any particular accomplishments. As a part of my professional life, I do a great deal of traveling. Now, I don't know whether you've done much traveling in your life or not. But even if you've never actually visited other cultures in person, you've certainly heard about them, read about them, perhaps seen them in movies or on television. Other cultures that range from very primitive by our standards to very advanced cultures. And as someone who travels a great deal, I'm always very aware that when I step into another culture, that these people have a common history. They have an identity. They have their own language. They know their land. They know their people. They know their customs far better than I, as an outsider, ever will. Now, when I travel into another culture, can I really use my American background to judge them? Is English a better language than theirs? Or are they equally capable of expressing ideas and sharing information? Are American values really better than theirs? Or are they equally capable of having strong family ties, encouraging loving relationships, and developing important life skills? And the people of that foreign culture may do things very differently, and yet still be sophisticated in their own ways, worthy of my great respect and even my admiration. But if I go into a culture that is not my own, and I don't have the ability to adjust my language to those people there who don't speak English as their native tongue, and if I don't adjust my customs or my manners out of respect for their way of life, then what am I doing? I'm only doing the same thing I've always done, because that's what I learned and it's what I know how to do. It's what I'm most comfortable with. And yet, clearly, it makes no sense to act as if the whole world is America. I must learn how to fit into this foreign culture that I am visiting. And so for me to be a respectful traveler, I could try and learn to speak a little bit of their language. I can observe and respect their customs. I could acknowledge that their ways are good for them even if I prefer a different way when I'm at home. And it means stretching myself to adapt to a culture that is not my own in order to communicate respect and to create harmony, and in order for me to learn and relearn that there are more ways to go through life that are just fine than my way. And so when you're sitting quietly, the way that you are now, you can certainly absorb the much deeper message about traveling, doing things differently, and adapting yourself to changing situations. Because the reality is, every person you meet is a foreigner with his or her own language, his or her own customs. Every situation you encounter is new and different. And for you to respond the same way now as you did before, as if there are no differences at all, is simply a mechanical response, a patterned one, not a creative one, not an adaptive one. And when you do the same old thing, you're most likely going to get the same old response, the same old result. And you can feel as if you're right and it should work, yet still generate an undesirable result. And you may feel justified doing it the same old way. But if your method doesn't get the result that you want, then just how effective are you really? The ability to adapt to changing circumstances is critical to survival. It certainly dictates the quality of your life in some ways. As you've no doubt noticed, times are changing. People used to work at a job and then go home to their families. Now so many people live alone and work into the evening. People used to socialize. Now they watch TV, or they log onto the internet. People used to meet socially and date. Now they place ads in newspapers looking for partners. Times have changed. And there are those who don't like what is happening, so they try and keep things the way that they used to be. But certainly by now you've learned you can't live in the past. Things change. Kids grow up. Economies change. Technology increases. Societies change. Cultural values change. And it's your ability to adapt, to read situations clearly, and to be able to reach inside yourself and find the parts of you that are most relevant, that will let you handle the situations skillfully. It's that ability to adapt that I'm wanting you to perfect. It means knowing yourself, knowing your range of capabilities, learning to develop new skills, growing, always growing, adapting, changing with changing times. And there's a certain delight in discovering within yourself the ability to change with changing times. And so when it's time to do something different, you can be observant about what works. You can be informed about what's sensible. But most of all, you can demand of yourself that you extend yourself by experimenting with new behaviors, doing things, not just thinking things, not just feeling things, but actively doing things. Doing things that can bring about a different and more satisfying result. And when you're not sure what to do, you can save yourself a lot of despair and frustration by going outside of yourself to find out from others what's feasible, what's effective. So much of what I learn from people who do things well. Now, during this period of time that you have been sitting there and listening, you can sense a powerful, positive motivation building. And when you realize it isn't you, but it is something about your strategy that needs modifying, it's really very, very encouraging to realize at a deep level that if you change what you do, you can and will get a different result, a much better result. And so you can gradually stop despairing, and you can start learning. You can stop feeling like a victim and start feeling strong as you realize you have new choices now to step outside what has been in the past, to do something different. And it's those great feelings of motivation, and it's your willingness to learn and keep learning that I'd encourage you to bring back with you in just a moment when I ask you to reorient yourself. But first, take whatever time you need to process, absorb all that I've talked about at a very deep level within you. And let the words do something different. Let them keep surfacing in your awareness to remind you of the possibilities in each and every situation where you care about what actually happens. And so when you're ready to, you can bring this hypnotic experience to a comfortable close and start the process of slowly reorienting yourself at a rate that's easy and gradual. And in a little while, when you're ready, you can begin to move around to re-energize yourself and re-alert yourself. Open your eyes, fully reoriented. There's no doubt that one of the most troublesome symptoms often associated with depression is a sleep disturbance. The disturbance in sleep habits generally takes one of three forms. 1, the individual may have difficulty initially falling asleep. 2, The individual may have difficulty staying asleep, falling asleep easily and then waking up after only a couple of hours and then having difficulty falling back asleep. Or 3, the person may wake up much too early, well before the time that he or she actually needs to awaken. In each case, the inability to sleep can take its toll. So often, depression can leave you walking around feeling tired, deeply fatigued, and as if your head's in a bit of a fog. At such times, it is difficult to think critically, and it's difficult to make good decisions. Consequently, you may end up feeling quite irritable, even touchy. And so, stemming from the sleep disturbance itself, there can be other problems that arise on other levels of experience. The upcoming hypnosis session on this side of your Focusing on Feeling Good program will be dealing with the problem of sleep disturbance. Specifically, I will strive to create a context in which you can fall asleep relatively easily, stay asleep, and later wake up at an appropriate time, feeling well rested and energized. In order to successfully do that, it is important to first appreciate a few relevant facts about sleep. Sleep is largely regulated by a biological cycle known as the circadian rhythm, the body's natural 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. On a basic level, it helps to know that the body naturally goes through periods of greater and lesser alertness throughout the day, and that sleep is vital in maintaining a sense of balance and well-being. There is no doubt, however, that stress and emotional problems can interrupt the biological sleep cycle. Pressures, both internal and external, can so occupy your mind and so greatly stress your body that sleep becomes disrupted. There are many other things that I could say about sleep, but the most important thing about it as far as depression goes, and what we will most strive to accomplish with this session, is curtailing the presence of what is called rumination. Rumination is the hurtful tendency to spin around and around and around the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same concerns over and over again. It is a redundant process of always worrying about and analyzing ongoing issues and problems. Trying to analyze and solve problems at the time you're trying to sleep only agitates you and actually prevents good, restful sleep. Problem solving is best left to your waking hours. But it means establishing a limit such that when you go to bed, you strive to clear your mind of the everyday stresses and concerns. Make that clearing of your mind a consistent target to aim for. Many depressed people spend so little quality time with themselves because they're always externally focused on their tasks or responsibilities and meeting the life demands placed on them. Being so busy, you may not have much time to think carefully about your experience and reflect on and process it. The natural but unfortunate time to do so, then, is when you finally have some quiet time to yourself to do your thinking and processing. Unfortunately, that time is when you go to sleep. But that is definitely the wrong time to do it. From the time that you go to bed to the time that you wake up well rested in the morning, strive to have your mind clear of unnecessary clutter. To accomplish that, strive to set aside sufficient problem-solving time and contemplation time throughout the rest of the day. Then you don't have to give up sleep time to ruminations about ongoing issues and concerns. If you were to ask, and you might even want to ask to find this out for yourself, people who sleep well, what goes through their mind when they're falling asleep, I'd be willing to bet you that most of them tell you nothing. Or if they wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and come back to bed, if you'd ask them, "So what do you think about then?" I'd bet you the good sleepers would say, "Nothing." There is nothing in particular on their minds. There is nothing immediate pressing on them. They feel no internal pressure to solve problems or to hash and rehash the injustices or difficulties of life. Everything fades into the distance for the good sleeper. For right then, it's just them and sleep. Can you see how important good boundaries are to separate sleep time from problem-solving time? Good boundaries are so important. And so, this is the target we are aiming for. Being able to distance yourself greatly from the everyday concerns and issues so that you can have some quiet time in your mind to be able to sleep comfortably. With that quick introduction to this section, I'd like to invite you to arrange yourself in a position that is comfortable. Unlike all the other sessions, which I really would not want you to listen to while you're in bed, because I don't want you to associate listening to a hypnosis session to going to sleep, with this particular session, it is appropriate for you to listen to it while you're in bed as you're going to sleep. After all, the purpose of this particular session is to make sleep easier, more satisfying, and more restful. So, with that in mind, I'd like you to let your eyes close and notice the differences instantly as soon as you let your eyes close. It means you're no longer seeing light and shadow. It means that you have closed your eyes to the outside world for now. And in a way, you might think of that simple action of closing your eyes as starting to close out the world out there. Now, certainly you'll hear the sounds, the routine sounds of your environment. And because they are so routine, whether it is a dog barking or crickets chirping or traffic, it doesn't matter what it is. It's routine and not worth noticing for more than the moment it takes to gently pass through your awareness. It's what is commonly known as white noise, an ongoing but easy to ignore background that simply keeps reminding you in a very indirect way that the world is going about its usual business. Nothing particularly important going on. Nothing in particular requiring your attention right now. And that's what can free your mind to be very present in this moment, which precedes your sleep. Unlike other hypnosis sessions that we've done that involve you in thinking ahead and actively solving problems, in this session, you get to let your mind grow ever quieter, ever more comfortable. And you can notice now how good that feels. Now you know and I know that everybody is constantly talking to themselves through their thoughts. And so you might already have noticed that it is as if there is an ever-present voice in your head, the voice of you talking to yourself. That is entirely normal and in fact can be quite comforting. And while you might normally be talking to yourself about things that happened earlier today or things that may be happening tomorrow, or the big issues in your life. It's really quite soothing to now recognize that you can slowly turn down the rate and volume of that voice until you find yourself thinking in a slow, quiet whisper that is barely audible. And isn't it surprising and wonderful just how quiet it can get inside your head? All the freedom, there's so much freedom to not have to think. And you can feel the freedom of being able to drift off to sleep slowly, deliberately. And of course, you already know it's not something that you can make yourself do any more than you can make yourself 4'8". Rather, it's something that you allow yourself to experience by guiding your thoughts in a useful direction. In this case, the direction of drifting off into a wonderful, peaceful sleep. And so where might your mind be right now? No place. Nowhere. The middle of nowhere. A place where you don't have to think, where your body just rests comfortably, where you can notice the rhythmic rise and fall of your chest as you breathe. Slowly in and slowly out. And then, little by little, you may become aware that you really aren't thinking about anything in particular. How your attention stays ever more focused on the wonderfully comfortable immediacy of the safety and warmth, the deeply comfortable warmth of your bed. And so you can feel your body, but it's as if it's incredibly heavy, weighted down as you lay there, almost as if you're just melting into the bed. And then you can notice the subtle sensations associated with falling asleep. Which parts of your body seem to drift off first? Which parts are the heaviest? As if it would take just massive effort to move them. And with your breathing slowing and your mind growing ever quieter, it can feel wonderful to be drifting off so easily and effortlessly. And it's interesting that as you drift off, you first find yourself in this in-between place of not yet being deeply asleep and yet not really awake either. And it's in this in-between state that you discover how it feels to have your body so fully supported by the bed, to have your mind drifting along, not really lingering on anything in particular. And then to notice the feel of the fabric of your sheets is a simple yet wonderful and calming sensation. And the feel of your blanket snuggling against your body, your pillow, just perfect. And each of these soothing experiences of body awareness can just highlight for you how it feels to be in the middle of the experience of drifting off into a deep, peaceful sleep. A deep, peaceful sleep that allows you to sleep through the night surprisingly well by scattering your thoughts all over until there aren't any, and thereby leaving you perfectly at ease with the very idea of sleeping well, with nothing on your mind, body comfortable, very much at peace. And relaxed within yourself. And so you notice that your body and your mind are drifting, drifting. And no need to drift off to sleep just yet, unless you really want to. But you can allow yourself the luxury of being in this state of mind and body for a long, restful time. And when you wake up after this deep, restful sleep, many hours from now, you'll naturally feel rested and energized. It's a powerful experience of rediscovering, quite naturally, that you can sleep. You can sleep deeply. Sleep deeply. And so you can just enjoy the profound comfort, the extraordinary sense of peacefulness that you can carry with you as you drift off into your dreams and sleep. Sleep. So now you can drift off. Drift off and sleep well. Good night. All you have to do is pick up a daily newspaper or turn on the nightly news to hear the discouraging stories about all the different desperate struggles going on all over the world. They may be struggles over politics or religion or individual choices and lifestyles. But whatever the issue, it would be easy to come to the depressing conclusion that the world is spinning out of control and you're stuck spinning with it. Perhaps you remember the popular old Broadway play, Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. It's easy to understand the feelings many people have that the world is too big, too demanding, too impersonal, too cold, too critical, too depressing. And if you view your life in such broad global terms, and you become concerned about all the world's issues, and then you try and find your place in the world, it can seem daunting, even overwhelming. But why isn't it this way for everyone? What tools do people who aren't depressed use to maintain an ability to feel good about their lives and their world? Certainly, it's important to be able to appreciate the complexity of world situations and the complexity of human nature. But what I'm particularly interested in is how you choose your responses to the things you are exposed to, meaning the various situations that you face and the people that you interact with. We are living in the same world, you and I, and yet our responses may be quite different to the situations that we face and the inevitable problems that we all have to deal with. One of the things that is well known about depression and those individuals who are prone to suffer it is that when some people feel beaten down, or when they feel like they have been hurt or are continuing to be hurt by other people, or by life situations, or by problems that seem too huge to deal with, they may retreat into a sense of personal helplessness, feeling they are victims of situational and emotional forces too great to overcome. It's a shame when that happens, because the despair and depression that come from feeling helpless to make any difference or to change things is most often an illusion. In my book, Breaking the Patterns of Depression, I describe what is known as the learned helplessness model of depression. And if you haven't yet read it, or don't immediately recall what I said about it in the book, I encourage you to read or go back and reread those sections of the book, because it is absolutely vital in facilitating your recovery from depression that you come to terms with the issue of controllability in your life. As I describe in the book, I don't know if I have ever encountered anyone who was depressed who didn't make errors, often serious and depressing errors, about the issue of control. The errors predictably take one of two forms. One is known as the illusion of helplessness, where you might feel like no matter what you do, you're stuck. You feel absolutely victimized by some person or situation, and that you absolutely cannot change or improve anything, and so all you can do is quietly suffer. The illusion of helplessness occurs when someone views himself or herself as helpless when in fact he or she really is not. In fact, there are things that he or she could do to improve his or her life circumstances. The person can learn to respond differently, to think differently and feel differently, and to learn new skills that can lead to a better quality of life. Maybe he or she can't do them immediately because the skill takes some time to learn. For example, to eventually become economically independent, and thereby escape having to depend on someone for economic support who is hurtful or abusive, someone might need to go back to school and take the time to develop a career. I've often had people say to me, "Well, I can't go back to school now. I'm 46. It will take me 4 years. I'll be 50 when I graduate." And I'm the one who has to ask, how old will you be in 4 years if you don't go back to school? And so, at the age of 50, you can have new career options that allow for financial independence. The key point here is that you have choices. You're not helpless. Strive to discover how to recognize choices and how to choose wisely. The other error that people commonly make is called the illusion of control. The illusion of control exists when people believe they can control some person or situation when, in fact, they can't. They want someone to feel or act a certain way, or they want some situation to happen in a particular way. But despite their wishes, other factors control what happens. So they end up trying and failing to get some result, and then they personalize that they must somehow be terribly defective. Then they sink into despair and depression as a result of discovering that here is something they care a great deal about, but can't really do anything about. Consider the illusion of control that exists, for example, when you want to make your child value a college education, or when you want your spouse to be a more sensitive communicator. The illusion of control is in believing you can make your child or spouse want to be whatever it is that you want him or her to be. That person may be your child or spouse, but he or she is not your slave. You don't have absolute control over what this person chooses to do of his or her own free will. And if you try and control that person, you end up learning the hard way that you just don't have total control over him or her. As a general principle, in any relationship, you're only 50% of it. You can't establish 100% control when you're only 50% of something. But you can make changes about what you do. You are in control of what you do, what you say, where you go, what you eat, who you choose to spend time with, what you read, and on and on. You do have control over much of what happens in your life, but no one is in control of everything. It's possible to prevent depressive episodes when you learn to invest yourself wisely in choosing which things you are going to spend time and energy on, and which things you're going to back away from emotionally, because you recognize that you have little or no ability to control what happens. Most of the time, however, your ability to control circumstances is not all or none. You can usually put forth some well-focused effort to create some positive possibilities. As I've said in one of the earlier sessions of this audio tape program, you can strive to create possibilities, but there aren't many guarantees in life. What success is about is when possibilities start to become realities. But not every attempt that you make will succeed. After all, no one succeeds at everything. But your number and quality of successes can increase as your ability to choose wisely how much of yourself and when to invest yourself in some endeavor increases. So, what this session is about is getting you absorbed in learning to quickly evaluate in a careful and well-reasoned way what is in your control and what isn't in your control, so you can take charge of your life and make good decisions in your own behalf, skillfully and deliberately. And so to get yourself started now in this hypnosis session, I'd like you to arrange yourself in a position that is comfortable. And I'd like to encourage you to use your knowledge of yourself now to recognize how you can gradually guide yourself into a wonderful state of comfort, of mind and body. And if you haven't closed them already, go ahead and close your eyes so that you can effectively close out all of the external distractions. Of course, the external world is naturally going to go on as usual all around you. But in terms of your inner experience, you have the ability to control the direction of your thoughts, the quality of your thoughts. And so you can create a wonderfully comfortable state of mind and body, where you give yourself plenty of room, plenty of distance from all the everyday demands and responsibilities. And that's why, in a way, right now it doesn't even matter what goes on out there. But what does matter a lot is what goes on inside you. What you learn, what you discover that helps you feel better and stronger. I think what is most enjoyable about experiencing hypnosis, this deep state of relaxation and comfort that is growing ever deeper, moment by moment, is that it can remind you in a very powerful way to the very core of who you are, that day in and day out, you get to choose. You get to choose where your thinking goes. You get to choose what new skills you want to learn. You get to choose what you want to do with your time off, what you want to think about when you have free time. You get to choose whether to express your feelings, and if so, you get to choose how and when to express them, and to whom. And what does it mean to be in control? It means recognizing and using your ability to choose, the power to choose. And when you use your power and your wisdom to choose wisely, the quality of your life continues to grow, and the depth of who you are continues to evolve. I think sometimes that what I find troublesome is when people don't realize that they have the power to choose. Perhaps you've had earlier experiences in your life where you felt trapped in negative or hurtful circumstances. And maybe you still feel trapped. And I really don't know whether someone else would agree that you're trapped. But it's interesting to consider that when you deliberately challenge yourself to actively take the steps to step outside the boundaries of what you have believed, you can dare to ask yourself a question. What if? What if? What if I'm open to exploring and discovering new possibilities and doing something different? You might actually discover a sense of excitement, the kind of excitement that builds when you take intelligent risks in your own behalf. And if you look at other people's lives that you admire, you can appreciate there were no guarantees of success given them. Just because someone enrolls in a college program doesn't guarantee that he or she will definitely graduate. But enrolling creates the possibility of taking a course and passing it, and taking another course and passing it, and another, and another, and eventually graduating. And it is in your control whether you go to class, and it is in your control whether you study, and it is in your control whether you write term papers thoughtfully, and turn them in on time. And that's so much of what getting a college degree is. It's showing up for class and doing the work and enduring difficult exams and boring lectures. And if you keep showing up long enough and you do your work well, you graduate. And in a way, that's what the rest of life is about, creating possibilities, striving to make them realities. And so it's time for you to carefully consider what has previously seemed out of your control. What have you managed to convince yourself you can't do anything about? And now start to ask yourself, what if? What if? And of course, at those times, you just don't see any alternatives. You always have the option of talking to someone else and getting another viewpoint. So many times it happens in life that what seems like a trap to one person is a welcome opportunity to another. So often my clients come in and they feel stuck and helpless, and they feel bad, and they truly want to feel better. But I can see things that they can't. Everyone has what might be called blind spots in their field of vision. I have them too. And when I get stuck, it's nice that I have people around me that I can ask for help or for another opinion or another viewpoint, or that I can ask questions and learn from other people who have apparently learned to handle it well and who can describe to me what it takes to handle it well, and thereby give me a target to aim for in planning my own behavior, in planning my own strategies. You didn't learn to be the way you are all by yourself. You don't have to solve problems all by yourself. And one of the things that is in your control is choosing. Choosing to find an ally, a knowledgeable or caring person that can support you in your efforts. And day in and day out, you face all kinds of situations and all kinds of circumstances. And you can take these ideas and make them so natural within you, so automatic within you, that you almost instantly recognize when to step into and absorb yourself in a situation and make something good happen, because you can influence it to one degree or another. You may not have total control over it, but you can influence what happens. You can create an opportunity. You can create a possibility. And conversely, in other situations, you can almost instantly recognize here's something you have little or no control over. And you can, for the record, state your opinion or do what you need to do to feel good about yourself. But at the same time, you can emotionally pull yourself back enough, emotionally distance yourself enough that you're still comfortable with whatever happens. You can always remember to never fully invest yourself in something you only have partial influence upon. The power to choose is a very important one. You have the freedom to choose. You know that you are responsible for the choices that you make, but only the choices that you make. And it's a gift, a wonderful gift, to have that freedom to choose which people you will allow into your life because they make you feel good when you're around them, what you'll choose to do with your time because it stimulates you and pleases you, where you'll choose to go, when you'll choose to do something because it's time for you to do what helps you. I think you can feel the freedom now. You're not stuck. You're free to choose, and you're in control. And you can take the time and gather the facts in order to choose wisely. And so when you hear these phrases running through your mind over and over, the freedom to choose, the power to choose, it can really feel good, really feel good. And so, with those good feelings flowing through you, you can feel the power and what it means to be in control of your body as you breathe comfortably and as you feel the deep relaxation in all the muscles of your body. And as you're aware of the freedom of your mind to think and problem solve and anticipate. Very aware of the freedom of your spirit to know that your life is yours and the choice of how you use your life is yours. And these are all the things that are definitely in your control. And so, if ever and whenever you start to feel that things aren't going your way, you'll remember the power to choose, the freedom to do something different in order to feel better and to reaffirm that you can move through life more easily and skillfully. And so you can take whatever time you'd like to stay with these ideas and consider them ever more deeply and absorb them ever more deeply into the core of your very being. And then when you've had enough time to process and learn from this session, then you can bring this session to a close, a comfortable close, feeling good about yourself and feeling as though you've finally settled something important within yourself. And when you're ready to end for now, then you can start the process of slowly reorienting yourself at a rate that's comfortable and gradual. Take your time in doing so. And then, when you're fully prepared to, you can alert yourself. You can reorient yourself fully and completely and open your eyes. One of the most common emotions associated with depression are feelings of guilt. Very often, perhaps most often, the guilty feelings are excessive, meaning they are, in some way, more intense than a situation objectively warrants. Or the feelings of guilt may be entirely inappropriate. That is, the person is suffering guilty feelings unnecessarily. Guilt feels lousy. There are few emotions that feel as bad as guilt does. It has the potential to hurt your relationships with others, but most painfully, it may hurt your relationship with yourself. When your judgment about yourself is that you've done something very wrong or you handled some situation poorly, you may not only regret what happened, but you may blame yourself and feel guilty as a result for the way things went. The issue of guilt is directly tied to the issue of blame. When something happens and you react to it, or when you make something happen, there is a range of possibilities for where the responsibility can be placed for what happens. Guilt presupposes or assumes that it was your responsibility for whatever happened. Sometimes you are responsible for mistakes, and at such times guilt is normal and even desirable. It is the basis for having a conscience and for appreciating the need to be a socially responsible human being. So often, though, over the years, I have observed over and over how people can be manipulated into erroneously believing that they're to blame in some way for things that they objectively are not to blame for. They've been led to feel that way by other people who skillfully use guilt as a manipulative mechanism to control them. A specific aspect of defining your boundaries in general is defining what you are and are not responsible for as an individual on a situation-by-situation basis. You are responsible for the choices that you make, and you are responsible for the actions that you take. Likewise, you are not responsible for the choices that other people make. It isn't your job, nor should it be, to manage other people's feelings for them, to decide what they can and can't handle, or to otherwise make other people's choices for them. Of course, I'm talking about adult relationships. I'm not talking about being responsible for your children when they're young. I'm talking more about treating other people well and treating them respectfully, but at the same time recognizing that it isn't your job to do everything they want you to do in order to keep them happy, particularly when it is at your expense. So in my book, Breaking the Patterns of Depression, I describe a woman named Amanda who is forever feeling guilty about being the source of disappointment to her mother because she independently chose a career and independently chose a man to marry and independently chose a lifestyle, all of which were disappointing to her mother. These are all appropriate things for an adult woman like Amanda to do, but her mother attempts to make Amanda feel responsible for living up to her mother's standards and expectations, even though they conflict with Amanda's. If Amanda's mother chooses to believe her daughter is there to live up to her expectations, then so be it. But Amanda doesn't have to feel she is second-rate when she chooses to live her own life. What do you think Amanda's responses should be when her mother points an accusing finger at her? Now is a good time for you to step back and think about how you make life choices. How well do you make choices and anticipate the consequences of those choices? In the very first hypnosis session of this tape series, which is on side 2, I strongly emphasize the value of foresight. Well, in this context, I can talk about the value of foresight in preventing guilt or reducing guilt by making choices now that you'll still feel good about later. When I talk about making choices and anticipating and then handling the consequences, I'm talking about a value that seems to be on the decline in America. I'm sure you have read in the newspapers or heard on television news many stories about people doing something really foolish and then turning around and blaming someone else. One such story that received a great deal of media attention was about a woman who bought a cup of coffee at McDonald's hamburger restaurant at the drive-thru. Before driving away, she placed the cup of hot coffee between her legs, but then she hit a speed bump and spilled the coffee on herself, burning herself in a very sensitive area. Instead of saying to herself, "That was really foolish that I did that," and suffering the discomfort of the scalding while recognizing that it was a product of her own poor judgment, she turned around and sued McDonald's for serving their coffee too hot. Even more shocking, to me at least, she won the lawsuit. I could give you many examples that are exactly like that. Examples of people suing other people or merely blaming other people for their own bad choices. Examples like some guy getting drunk, driving off in a car, getting into an accident, and then suing the bar and the bartender for serving so many drinks. Now, should McDonald's feel guilty that they sold a cup of hot coffee to someone who was later burned by it? Should a bartender feel guilty that he served drinks to someone who was then driving drunk? No, they shouldn't feel guilty, and they should remind themselves it's not their fault. They are not responsible for others' bad decisions or ill-conceived actions. If you're feeling guilty about a choice you made that went bad, I'd encourage you to begin to talk to yourself differently about it. People do make mistakes, and as long as you live in a human body and have a human mind, there will be times that you perceive things incorrectly and times that you choose unwisely. Neither you or I can change the past. It's over. But you're more than your history. You're more than decisions that you've made in the past and things that you might have done in the past. The best way to come to terms with mistakes that you've made in the past is to develop a really good future out of it. That's why I'm so interested in the choices that you make for the future. You can learn to choose wisely and with integrity so that you can go through life feeling good about who you are and what you do. With that principle in mind, the hypnosis session that we are about to do emphasizes and re-emphasizes getting comfortable with who you are and how you do things. The goal is to help you let go of unnecessary or inappropriate guilt that you have suffered for criticizing yourself when you didn't live up to what might well have been unrealistic standards that either you or someone else set for you. And each time that you listen to this session, you can ease the guilt feelings right out of you, finally healing that sore spot within yourself that you've been picking at. Now would be a good time to arrange yourself in a position that is comfortable. And if you're ready to, you can start focusing yourself now on making yourself comfortable on all levels. Now I know that initially your thoughts may be going off in a lot of different directions, but when you close your eyes, as I'd like you to do now, and you start to relax your body by breathing slowly, deeply, and by letting your arms and legs just rest there, heavy and getting heavier, getting so comfortable that even your mind begins to slow down. Thoughts getting more focused, your mind getting clearer, and little by little, your feelings are soothed and comforted, so that in the most wonderful of ways, you get to just be for a while. No demands, no pressures. And you get to finally come to terms with all those old, outdated feelings in order to ease them right out of your system, a little at a time, by getting clearer and stronger. about who you are and what you're about, and how you've grown over time. You have a very important opportunity right now to reach a new level of understanding about your own sense of personal integrity. And by personal integrity, I mean the code that you live by, a sort of code of honor. And one of the most difficult concepts for most people to grasp is that no one is pure and no one is one-dimensional, that is defined by a single characteristic. And so you can now better understand and more deeply understand that someone can do something that isn't very nice and yet still be a good person. It isn't so simple that a bad person only does bad things and a good person only does good things. Sometimes really good people do something that really isn't very good, just as sometimes a really bad person can do something really nice. A real honest person can do something dishonest. And a dishonest person can sometimes tell the truth. Life isn't quite so simple or easy, and it distorts things to think in overly simplistic all or none terms, such that if you do something bad, it makes you a bad person. Any more than if you do something good, it makes you a good person. It's just too simple to be entirely true. You know, I'm a clinical psychologist, and generally speaking, I'm a pretty sensitive person, and I'm a pretty perceptive person. I'm often good at reading other people, figuring out who they are, what they're about. And yet, as sensitive as I generally am, every once in a while, I'll miss the boat. I'll say something that wasn't very well thought out, that hurt somebody. Or I'll do something that ended up hurting someone else's feelings. Now, it's almost never anything big that I've done that was insensitive, but even if it was relatively small, it did hurt someone's feelings, and I certainly don't want to do that. But I'm not perfect, and I don't know of anyone who is. I think the real measure of my integrity is that as soon as I discover that I did or said something that offended someone, I'll apologize for it, and I'll attempt to make it right. It was my action, and I'm the one who has to take responsibility for the hurtful consequences. And yes, I'll feel bad about it. I'll feel guilty. But I'll also remind myself that a sensitive person can occasionally do an insensitive thing. And a smart person can occasionally do something pretty foolish. And it quickly eases my feelings of guilt to recognize that I'm not always responsible for others' feelings. Sometimes I am, by things I say and do, and reactions I trigger. But more often than not, someone else is blaming me for something that I'm really not to blame for. They tell me that it's my fault that they had to stay up all night worrying when I went out for the evening, or that it's my fault they were too distracted to remember where they put their own car keys. And if I'm not perceptive enough to recognize that they're blaming me for something I'm not to blame for, then I could easily walk around feeling bad or guilty. I've worked with people who have hit their spouses, engaged in senseless, violent behavior. And sometimes the aggressors are very clear that they behaved in a way that was totally unacceptable, and they're truly sorry. And other times I've worked with aggressors who blame the victim and say, well, if that person wouldn't have provoked me, I wouldn't have become violent. And they literally blame the other person for their violence. Such a person doesn't feel guilty that they hurt someone, and I find that appalling and destructive and irresponsible and just plain foolish. Part of what you're learning, I hope, is that the ability to feel guilty means that you have a conscience, a higher sense of virtue. And if I hurt someone or you hurt someone, feeling guilty is normal, appropriate, even desirable. But it doesn't need to be excessive or out of line, nor does it need to linger forever. And so you can let it go, day by day. Let it go. Living your life now at a higher level of integrity, being more aware of yourself and how you affect others, being more deliberate about the choices that you make, and situation by situation, recognizing the boundary that defines the limits of your responsibilities. It isn't your job to keep that person from making poorly informed choices. It isn't your job to keep that person off of drugs. It isn't your job to keep that person from getting angry. It isn't your job, for example, to make sure your spouse's project report for work is written and turned in on time. You may want to and perhaps will help, but it's still a responsibility that belongs to your spouse. And so the clearer you get about the limits of your responsibilities, the less often you'll feel guilty inappropriately or unrealistically, and the more you'll be able to appreciate yourself and like yourself for the things that you do and the good ways that you treat people with integrity and respect, and the good ways that you treat yourself with integrity and respect, and how good it can now feel to go through your day-to-day life without the guilt pangs of old. And doesn't it feel good, even now, to let go and feel good and be clearer? So enjoy the comfort, the relief that you're feeling now, and carry it with you through the rest of your day and through every day. Now you can finally unpack your bags because you're not going on a guilt trip. And when you've had enough time to fully absorb the implications and meanings and learnings of this focusing experience, then you can bring this session to an end with a feeling that's comfortable and nice. And when you've done that, you can start the process of bringing yourself out of hypnosis at a slow and gradual rate that is comfortable for you. Then, when you have brought yourself to a fully alert state, you can open your eyes and go about doing the things that you need to make it a really good day. One of the most important things that can and should happen in any individual's personal development is evolving a clear sense of who he or she is. Knowing who you are means developing an awareness of your personal values, your personal beliefs, your attitudes, and all the different aspects of your makeup that define you as an individual. The process of first learning to define yourself as an individual and then learning to assert and maintain your individuality is known as defining your boundaries. Having clear and strong boundaries is vital if you are to feel good about who you are. Frequently, when I am working with couples and families, I am struck by how often individuals who are in these close relationships essentially lose themselves to the other people around them. They may lose themselves in a variety of ways, perhaps most commonly by being an easy target for others to manipulate or take advantage of, giving in to the tactics of others who are in some way using or abusing them for their own selfish gain. When others seem to only care about how you can best meet their needs, and they seem to have little interest in meeting yours, there is most likely a boundary problem present in that relationship. The ability to establish your boundaries and carefully maintain them involves a number of skills, and their importance for your well-being cannot be overstated. It is virtually impossible for you to feel good about yourself if you do not have a clear sense of who you are, what matters to you, and what you are and are not willing to accept in your relationships with others. As you continue to develop a stronger sense of who you are and how you want to live your life, the issue of personal boundaries will surface repeatedly throughout your life, both in your relationships with others and in the relationship you have with yourself. So now would be an especially good time for you to give some careful consideration to how you manage your relationships with others. Do you frequently find other people uncomfortably intrusive? Do you find them unreasonably demanding? Do you find others difficult to deal with because they seem to overpower you easily, get you to give in to their demands, and leave you feeling badly about yourself? Do you simply give in to people who make demands on you rather than get into a confrontation with them and then lose respect for yourself as a result? Simply put, do you find it difficult to hold your own with others because you're usually so terrified of their rejection or disapproval that you end up giving in to their demands even when their demands are unreasonable? No doubt, when this happens to you, you end up feeling angry with the person that you feel pushed you. You may also end up feeling angry with yourself for having handled the situation in so ineffective a manner. Self-esteem suffers. Despair and a sense of helplessness and hopelessness can then take hold, leading to depression. In this session, I want to encourage you to develop a better ability to manage other people well by defining, asserting, and defending your personal boundaries. That means being decisive about what you are and are not willing to do, what you are and are not willing to say, what you can and even should accept about yourself as worthy and valid, what you choose to do and are willing to defend doing because it's right for you, what you're willing to let others do and say around you, and what you're not willing to let others do and say around you. These are just some of the many ways that your boundaries get expressed, or conversely, don't get expressed, ultimately to your detriment. You are the architect of your life. You're the one designing it, you're the one living it. No one knows your feelings better than you do. No one knows your internal world better than you do. So it is not only appropriate, but necessary if you intend to feel good, to deal with people in a straightforward and firm manner, ever aware of your personal boundaries, and being very clear how you want others to treat you and how they must treat you if they are to be a part of your life. Even if you are clear in stating your desire to be treated well, and without others employing negative manipulations, it doesn't automatically mean that the other person you're dealing with will be able to do what you request or demand. If you discover that this other person can't be honest, or can't honor agreements, or contribute meaningfully to the relationship, it is disappointing. But at least you'll be clear that the limitation in the relationship isn't you. Rather, it's the other person's inability to respect the standards that you set. That puts you in the position to choose whether to continue in this relationship or to redefine your position in some way if you are going to continue in it. That may mean you will need to pull back emotionally from certain people and not be so emotionally attached to someone who is not going to respect your needs or your boundaries. Or, if you discover this person isn't very capable, you can emotionally distance yourself by lowering your expectations of another so that you don't set yourself up to be disappointed. It helps a lot to know what others are truly capable of before you get too emotionally invested in them. Not everyone is capable of love, good communication, acceptance, loyalty, taking personal responsibility, and other such important relationship skills. This hypnosis session is about building boundaries. I will be emphasizing to you both directly and indirectly the need to establish the parameters in your dealings with others, and even in the dealings with yourself. What are you willing to accept from yourself? Are you willing to accept excuses, rationalizations, or justifications that allow problems to go on indefinitely without resolution? Are you willing to engage in behaviors that you yourself don't respect? Are you willing to yell and scream at people and call them names, or withdraw and pout in order to get your way? When I talk about boundaries, I'm talking about establishing self-defining parameters around your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors so that you can live the kind of high-quality life that you yourself can respect. I'd love for you to be able to frequently walk away from your interactions with other people thinking to yourself, I like what I did there. That's how good self-esteem gets built. I hope you'll use this hypnosis session to help keep you focused on the issue of boundaries, and I want to encourage you to continually build sensible, realistic boundaries and clarify and assert your boundaries, communicating them clearly to yourself and others. I'd like to invite you now to sit comfortably. You can arrange your body in a position that is comfortable for you. And then you can begin this focusing session by taking in a few deep, relaxing breaths. And let your eyes close now so that you can start to build an internal focus where you can begin to absorb yourself and focus your thoughts and feelings and shift your ways of experiencing yourself that you're starting to develop as valuable skills. And of course, each time that you experience hypnosis, it makes it easier to use your comfortable familiarity to get progressively more deeply relaxed, to be able to get into that wonderfully peaceful state of mind and body more quickly and more easily. Because you are already learning to define what comfort means to you and how your body can become increasingly skilled in recapturing the feelings, re-experiencing the feelings of being deeply comfortable. Now, I don't really know how anyone else experiences relaxation exactly, but you can certainly guess that other people experience it in some ways that are similar to you and the way that you experience it. But, on the other hand, you are a different person. Your experiences are inevitably going to be different from other people's. And it's easy to understand why that's true. After all, no one has the exact same background as you, your family, your parents. No one has exactly the same childhood experiences as you. No one has exactly all the same teachers, all the same influences. Even if you were a Siamese twin attached at the hip with someone else, you'd still be seeing the world from a different angle. And it's those differences between you and others that I'm really deeply interested in. Because it's those differences that define you as an individual. No one is the same as you. But what you've also learned is that people will have expectations of you, and they'll want things from you. And when you take the time, as you are now, to sit quietly, comfortably, it's easy to begin to appreciate how people can want things from you, whether it's your time, your energy, your support, your money, your expertise, your silence, your opinion, your involvement, whatever. People will always want things from you. There's nothing at all unusual about that. But there is no one who knows your experience better than you do. And so it really is very important that you be the one to decide what you'll say yes to, what you'll say no to, how much you can afford to give of yourself without hurting yourself, and how much you need to protect yourself, protect your time, your energy, by drawing the line and saying no. Because as you must know by now, the world's demand inevitably exceeds your personal supply. Now you know and I know that it isn't always easy to say no to someone, or to have to confront someone to tell them that what they are saying or doing is unacceptable to you. But one of the skills that you can now begin to master is developing a deeper awareness, a much deeper awareness of what you are saying between the lines, by agreeing or by ignoring what others say or do. And the examples are endless of how we can train people to do the very things that can end up becoming problems later. I can certainly give you an example. I was visiting some friends who live in another state when I was there on a teaching trip not long ago. And these friends have 2 young sons, who are fraternal twins. And the boys are wonderful boys. They're bright and they're quick. They're funny and they're playful. They're good boys. Normal boys and good boys. But there was one thing that I couldn't help but notice right away. How those boys were very demanding of their parents' attention. So even though I was a guest in their home for the evening, and the purpose of our being together was to catch up with each other, because we hadn't seen each other for a while, the boys would literally walk into a room, singly or together. And despite the fact that we adults were all in mid-conversation, the boys would interrupt quite rudely. Neither one would say, "Excuse me," nor would either one wait for a natural break in the conversation. They would just walk or run into the room and demand our immediate attention. I couldn't help but notice it right away, because when I see behavior like that, especially in children, I want to say something about it or do something about it right away. I want to establish a boundary, a clear limit that firmly says, this is not okay. But their parents said nothing. They accepted it. And as a guest, I decided to only be an observer of the parents acting as if it was an acceptable behavior, even though it is not acceptable. But having clear boundaries also means knowing I can't be the one to define this family's rules for them. But I did choose to model some limit setting by asking whoever interrupted to wait until we had finished our exchange. And I could tell the boys didn't like being made to wait, but they did. And the interruptions soon diminished. Now when I say, think about the message that is being given when you don't say something or when you don't confront something, out of the inconvenience of a confrontation or even the terror of a confrontation, arising out of a fear of the other person getting angry or getting cold and rejecting. What are these parents telling their boys? And what have their boys already learned? Well, let's put it into words. The parents are letting the boys interrupt rudely. And so the boys are learning that all they have to do is walk into a room and demand attention, and everyone will instantly stop whatever they are doing to respond. So the boys are learning that what they want matters more than what other people want. The boys are learning that they can have immediate attention whenever they want it. The boys are learning that it doesn't matter if they don't have manners. The boys are learning that they don't have to respect other people's conversations or interactions, that they can intrude whenever they want to. And by not teaching the boys to respect the boundaries of others' interactions, what will the long-term consequences be? Will the boys suddenly develop manners in the years to come? Or will they likely become more unruly and rude? And so I decided to set limits on their interruptions and model good boundaries for the parents. If you want people to treat you nicely, you can't look the other way when they are snippy or rude. If you want people to believe you when you say no, then you can't give in after you've said no when they start to pressure you to change your mind. If you want people to respect you, you have to engage with them and be willing to endure their anger, but still demand that they treat you respectfully, even though they may be angry, when you've said no or established a limit. Now, I live in Southern California, near the border with Mexico, and it's a constant item on the news how the illegal immigration problem is negatively affecting our local economy. And so what good is it to have a United States Border Patrol if it isn't effective in setting the limits about who can legally come into the country and who can't? What good is it to be a teacher if you always let the students run the class? How effective can you be as a boss if you're afraid of your employees getting angry with your policies? And so, think now about who sets the limits in your relationships with others. And in order for you to set the limits realistically, it means accepting yourself, defining yourself, and saying comfortably, "This is me. This is who I am." Other people may and probably do have different opinions. Other people may and probably do feel differently. But you can say, "This is me. This is how I feel, and it's right for me." You can think, "It's up to me to let other people know what's okay and what's not okay for me. What's acceptable and what's not acceptable for me." After all, as you can now appreciate, no one comes to you fully trained to be a good partner. Anyone you date, anyone you work with, anyone that is in your family, your friends, anyone in your life has to gradually learn how to treat you in the ways that you want to be treated. If you discover that others don't care enough or don't respect you enough to want to treat you in an honorable way, then you can make your decisions accordingly about whether you want to keep this person in your life, and if so, how emotionally distant you need to be to maintain good feelings about yourself, and in order for you to feel okay around this person. You might need to keep things distant and superficial between you just to protect yourself. That's part of what it means to have good boundaries. It means protecting yourself, treating your internal self, meaning your feelings, your needs, your wishes, as if they are enormously valuable, because you know what? They are. And so, do you notice? Are you now aware of strong, self-caring feelings that are getting even stronger as you listen and experience and learn from this tape and the other tapes as well? Doesn't it feel good to know you're developing yourself and you're growing and changing in very powerful ways? Enjoy those feelings. Keep them close and readily available to you. And recognize opportunities many times a day, every day, to make your boundaries known to yourself and others. Enjoy the feelings of comfort now. Notice how good it feels to be relaxed and to have your mind clear and focused. Take whatever time you want to enjoy these good feelings. And then, when you're ready, you can do the things that you need to bring about a strong sense of completion for this session. And then when you have that sense of completion, and when you feel good about what you've done now, you can start the process of reorienting yourself slowly, gradually. Take a little bit of time for yourself. And then when you're ready, you can reorient yourself completely alert, and allow your eyes to open. On this final side of the Focusing on Feeling Good program, I want to address directly what I consider to be some of the most important implications of everything that I've talked about, both during the hypnosis sessions as well as the introductions to each of them. One of the unfortunate things about my job as a clinical psychologist is that most often I am doing work that can only be described as mop-up. So often, by the time people come to see me for therapy, they have already experienced bad times, hard times, trauma, neglect, abuse, and all the other countless evils of the world we live in that can negatively affect individual lives. The fact that bad things or bad times have already happened often lead people into therapy in order to try to come to terms in some way with what has happened. That is undoubtedly an appropriate and good use of therapy, but that is still a mop-up process. To me, one of the most important aspects of knowing everything that I have learned about depression over the last quarter century is that depression experts now know what the major risk factors are for depression. We know a lot about who is likely to get depressed and under what circumstances. Here is an opportunity for you to learn something about prevention. The truth of the matter is, bad times happen to everyone, but not everyone sinks into depression as a result. Through these sessions, and hopefully through my writings, you've now been exposed to a comprehensive set of tools for understanding your own patterns for responding to life experiences and the vulnerabilities associated with those patterns. From the insights that you have hopefully gained from reading Breaking the Patterns of Depression and listening to these sessions, you've had many opportunities to realize that you can actually take steps, significant steps, in the direction of prevention of later episodes. If I had my way, I wouldn't want you to ever experience depression again. Although I can't stop bad or hurtful things from happening in people's lives, I can certainly strive to make sure, and so can you, that you're better equipped to deal with the difficulties that life throws at each of us. I can try to encourage you to be more critical as a thinker, and I can attempt to help you recognize the nasty trap of just believing whatever happens to fly through your mind. You're capable of having all kinds of thoughts, but not all of them are going to be sensible and rational or well thought out. Some of them can be quite distorted and even depressing. That's true for you, me, and everyone. And if you've learned anything from reading my book and experiencing these sessions, it's that you will have the lifelong obligation to yourself to continually monitor your thoughts, correct them when they are distorted, which means first recognizing that they are distorted. And beyond thinking more clearly, it also means using clear thinking to have a better sense of who you are as a person and what your contribution is to the ongoing network of people that you are involved with, be it your family, your friends, or coworkers at your job. Being aware of yourself means defining and accepting the different dimensions of who you are and what your life is about. Being able to recognize that your feelings are valid for you, and yet, at the same time, being aware that your feelings are just one part of you. You're more than your mood. You're more than your depression. You're more than your job. You're more than your history. You're more than your marriage. You're more than any one part of you. And what more are you but the ability to think ahead and to create life circumstances in your future that can bring out the best in you in the years to come? I hope you are becoming more able to recognize that the things that you think and feel may actually have little bearing on what is really objectively true. I also hope you now recognize how important it is to be a good problem solver, because as one realist put it, life is one damn thing after another. We all smile through our tears and often wonder how we can make it through the next 5 minutes. It's the goal of this session to help you integrate at a deep level all that you've learned and make good sense of all that you will continue to learn through new experiences, new places that you will go, and new people you will meet, things that you will read, and things that you will hear. I hope you will always strive to seek out new growth experiences and continually challenge yourself to grow in new and meaningful ways. There is so much that is possible in life. Keep the goals in mind of learning to think preventively and learning to eventually master the vulnerabilities of having a human body and a human mind with all its strengths and weaknesses and all its remarkable potentials. And so I'd like you to arrange yourself in a position that is comfortable, that you can sit in for a while, easily and effortlessly. One in which you can be comfortable and yet still remain alert enough to focus on the meaningful things that I'm talking about, so that you can absorb yourself in their deeper meaning and realize their deeper value in terms of your overall life experience. And when you're ready to begin to focus yourself, you can begin by taking in a few deep, relaxing breaths, breathing slowly, feeling the rise of your chest as you inhale slowly and deeply, and feeling it gently fall as you gradually exhale. And each breath in and out can relax you, calm you, reacquaint you with the deeper parts of yourself that you sometimes get too busy to notice. You know, and I know. It's very easy to get caught up in day-to-day living. There's always so much to do, so many obligations to attend to. But certainly, one of the things that you've now learned is that unless you deliberately take the time for yourself, stress can build and demands can be burdensome. And life can seem overwhelming. But now you have acquired a solution, many solutions actually. Many different strategies for managing your life well that you've learned along the way now. You've learned that you can take time, quiet time, to be with yourself in a way that is kind and supportive. And you've learned to talk to yourself in a way through your thoughts that's helpful and focused on solutions, not just problems. And you've also learned that you don't have to go dredging up the past in order to move forward into the future. You've learned a lot about learning to think in terms of what you want to have happen and what the steps are that you can take to bring those good and important things about. You've learned that taking action is vital. Action, not just thinking, not just contemplating, not just analyzing. Action. Because many times a day, you come to a fork in the road, and now you can find it so much more automatic to experiment with behavior and to try something new, not just anything, but something well thought out and planned. Perhaps something you've observed in others that works well. And so you continue to train yourself to think in terms of what is possible and what is realistic. Solutions. And so, day by day, all the things that you've learned about the differences between what is really true versus your own subjective interpretations, that has led you to become more skilled at looking for evidence and asking questions and gathering relevant information and making forward-looking decisions. These are many of the skills that you need to live life well, and you're learning them, and you're mastering them, and you can feel good about that. What you've been learning are skills in thinking, skills that are important for relating well to others, skills in knowing yourself and appreciating yourself. You're made up of so many different parts. And what I think you're now in a comfortable position to appreciate is that each part of you is valuable someplace. And with an eye on prevention, It's important to know all your different parts. The parts that like to work and those that like to play. The parts that like to be alone and those that like to be with others. The parts that like to be passive and the parts that like to be active. You have thinking parts and you have feeling parts. Parts that like things to be simple and parts that enjoy when things are a little bit complicated. Parts that think about the past and parts that think about the future. I can name dozens, maybe hundreds of parts of you. And what you've learned is that to live life well, it's a matter of using the right part for the job. To be able to tap into and make good use of the part of you that likes to work when it's time to work. That's a powerful match. And to be able to set aside work and get in touch with the part of you that likes to play when it's a day off and it's playtime. That can allow for some wonderful relaxation and recreation. And to be able to tap into the social part of you when you're with friends or family or colleagues can lead you to genuinely enjoy being with others. And they'll know that simply by being with you. Or to be able to tap into the part of you that enjoys being alone when you have some time to yourself, where you can feel comfortable being just by yourself. And so what does it take to live well and happily? I think it takes being able to move from situation to situation, knowing your parts and using your parts skillfully. Always having the question in the background of what am I wanting to experience? And to be able to think preventively. You can use your ability that is ever growing in sophistication of being able to think ahead and to choose paths that take you where you want to go in the long run, and not just the path that is easy and familiar, but eventually takes you to some place you really don't want to go. And it can be wonderfully comforting to realize at a very deep level within yourself that you can be so tuned in to life, so tuned in to what allows you to experience life as a wonderful adventure, and to carry with you a strong, enduring sense of optimism that can insulate you against temporary hard times. You can have that deep recognition that hard times don't last, but you will. And to continually seek out new growth experiences. You can continue learning, continue experiencing, continue observing. And all the principles of effective living come down to you knowing what it means to be powerful in your ability to choose. You have the ability to choose. You get to choose so much of what happens, like where you are and what you're doing. And one of the preventive tools that you have now acquired is being able to recognize ever more efficiently what you are in control of and what you are responsible for. And likewise, what you're not in control of and what you are not responsible for. It's really quite a relief to be able to keep moving forward with your life, seeking out new challenges, rising to them, always bringing out the best of your deeper self through the life that you lead. You can bring out the best of your deeper self. And so as you move into the future, you can take great comfort in knowing that you carry with you many wonderful skills, many wonderful resources. The things that you've learned and experienced, those are your resources. And so use these powerful resources to your own best advantage. Use your ability to choose wisely. And so, take whatever time you want to process your thoughts and feelings, and integrate deeply whatever you need to or want to in order to start to bring this experience to a comfortable close. And then when you're ready, you can start the process of slowly reorienting yourself at a rate that is gradual and comfortable, so that when you're ready, you can reorient yourself fully and open your eyes, fully alert and refreshed, feeling good, feeling good. And for all your life, keep focusing on feeling good.